Hey everyone, welcome to AOB, the show where we take you behind the scenes of our £100 million business and pass on those lessons. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm really excited about this episode because what we're going to do is help you stand out. And we'll help you stand out in business, but also we're going to look at how you can stand out as an employee or a prospective employee. And because we are a property business after all, we'll look at how you can stand out as a property investor. Rob, this sounds like it's hard to do. The truth is, it's easy to do, but hardly anyone does it.
That's what makes it so easy to do. Because most people in any kind of context are fine. They're not terrible, but they're not great. They're just all right. And so the most obvious place you see this is when you're looking at CVs for a job. Like, most of them are fine. But you see it in every other area as well. And that's what makes it such a huge opportunity, right? Because just a tiny improvement lifts you above the 90% that are just okay. So for example, here's something that happened just the other day. Because we've got the podcast and things like that, and we've got a decent sized audience, we get a fair amount of inbound with people wanting things, like wanting collaborations, wanting a plug, wanting whatever it is. And the vast majority of them just get ignored. They either get filtered out by our team or we just go, nah, because it's like, looks all right, but I don't really have the time to figure out what this is, who you are, whatever. It's not core to what we're doing. But then I got a message the other day from someone who'd recorded a 3-minute video explaining who he was, what he does. It was ultra personal, and it made clear instantly 2 things. One, that he was an impressive person. He had pedigree. He was someone you'd want to get to know. And secondly, that he knew who we were. It was very tailored. This wasn't something that he just blasted out to 100 people. I imagine that putting that together took him 5-10 times longer than just writing a generic message, but it got a response. And the hundreds of messages that we receive don't get a response. So I think, Rob, that sums up what we're talking about here. Because what he did wasn't groundbreaking, didn't write a song about me or anything, but it's just the fact that it was something a bit better than the rest meant they got a reply that hundreds of people don't get.
I can write a song about you if you want, Rob, but don't worry, I won't sing it.
Oh, thanks.
So you're absolutely right, Rob. Most of the noise gets ignored, and that is because it's just the norm. And most people operate at the norm. Remember, if everyone stood out, then that would become the new norm. The great thing is, not everyone does, so it's really easy to achieve. Let me give you another example, and hopefully this will start to stimulate ideas of how you can apply it to your business. But when we started the Property Podcast, we didn't just put it out there and then hope good things would happen. We had a launch plan. Now, when we launched this podcast, we had no platform. Nobody knew who we were. So we didn't have a platform to rely on to grow, but we put a launch plan together and we made sure very early on that the quality of our recording equipment was to a good standard. Again, before anybody was really listening, or we knew people were going to listen. And the effort of those 2 things paid off massively. That and then being consistent with the podcast. Now, what I've laid out might not sound that impressive. And you're right, to us, it was just the right thing to do, that you put a launch plan together, and that included things like posting on our limited social media profiles, reaching out to forums and posting about it there, and getting reviews in from friends and family early on. Yes, the very first reviews on the Property Podcast may have been acquired by people friendly to us, but we did it. And that stood us apart from pretty much every other podcast out there at the beginning. And then, guess what happened? It got picked up in the charts. And when it got picked up in the charts, more people found us. And because we were consistent and the quality of the audio was decent and we were okay, then it started to be passed around by word of mouth. And it grew and it grew and it grew. We've done that with so many areas of the business. But it's not common. Most people, particularly when they're starting, just do the average. They might spend a lot of time on a business plan, but that's not really starting a business. You need to do things at a higher level that's already out there, especially when you start out, because you really need to earn the right to be in the business world. Startups mostly fail. So to get away from the pack, and the pack is failure, you have to, yes, have the right idea, but then more important than the right idea in the right market is the execution, the determination to stand out. And if you are in the wrong market or you have the wrong idea, those practices that you've deployed will help you pivot. But taking time to stop and think about how you can stand out and how you can execute better than others is not something many people even consider doing or are willing to do.
So we'll move on to talk about how to apply this in different areas, because this concept goes way beyond just business. But Rob, that's all very well. I think it's easy to listen to that and go, yeah, I can see how standing out is a good thing. But how do you know when you're not in business or whatever? How do you know what the standard is, and how do you know what you should be doing to exceed it?
There's an exercise that I love from the founders of Airbnb, and what they did with their team very early on is they used this framework to stand out. And what they did is they went, okay, if you're staying in a property with Airbnb, what does a 5-star experience look like? And they and their leadership team put down what a 5-star experience would look like with Airbnb. So you get there, everything's clean, there's a welcome pack, it's a better standard than you even thought it would be. There's a handwritten note from the owner welcoming you to their property. There's a guide to the local area, just things that would make it a 5-star experience. And then they said, what would make it 6-star? And we often stop at 5, don't we? But by moving to 6-star, and then they eventually went to 7-star, it then gave them more creative ideas. And yes, you might not do them all, but it gets you thinking above what is the normal cutoff. And if you apply this to business, whether it's your product or the experience of your product or the onboarding of your product, wherever it may be, if you apply that experience, then you will stand out. I love it when a business, when I get a delivery from them, when it's more than just the standard packaging, when there's a little note from the founder, or the way the packaging is put together is clever and beautifully done. It's not common, but I remember those experiences. But it's not just the delivery. You can apply it to any part of your business. But if you go through that process, if it's just yourself, start off with 5-star, do all the 5-star stuff, and then go, what could 6-star look like? What could 7-star look like? And maybe not all of it is going to be feasible, but what's the adaptation of that 7-star experience? And that's what Airbnb did. And I think it turned out okay for them, Rob.
I think it did. And yeah, I love that example. I think it's a really great way of going about it. And because almost everything is exactly the same, it doesn't even have to get all the way to 7-star. Just doing anything a little bit different, a little bit better could be enough. My wife has bought her contact lenses for years from the same company because when they arrive, there's a little bag of sweets in there. And it's never occurred to her to look around and see if they're available cheaper anywhere else, because why would she? They're fine. They're probably the same kind of product you get everywhere else, but you also get a little bag of sweets. So just the smallest thing can be enough to set you apart. So that's what you can do as a business or as a business owner. But exactly the same principle applies, Rob, with employees. If you're applying for a job, and I'd say this applies even more strongly because you've looked at more CVs than I have, but in my experience, they are pretty much all exactly the same. Everyone has roughly the same experience. Everyone has some kind of degree. Everyone likes going to the cinema and socializing with their friends. So it really doesn't take much to stand out from the pack.
Yeah, and everyone's a team player, don't forget, but also capable of working by themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't stand out for me. If someone said, to be honest, I just can't get stuff done on my own, but put me in a team, I'm great. I'd probably be more inclined to give them an interview because at least they're being honest.
Yeah, or I don't like working in teams, but I'm phenomenal when I'm left to myself and I will produce great results. I'd be like, wow, that's different. You really, really would look at it differently and it would stand out. It's not done, though. Everyone plays safe with CVs. I get it right, you don't want to look stupid. But actually, because the majority of CVs look the same and people assessing CVs get CV blindness, it's actually worse to do that. You're better off going out on a limb and trying to stand out. I can't remember exactly where I put in my last CV because it was a long time ago now since I've applied for a job. But I remember the first paragraph, the first section, if you like, of the CV saying something like, climbed the highest mountains in the world. I've done various other achievements like running, I think it was half marathons, things like that. And I apply the same ambition that I do in my personal life to my work life. Now, remember, this is going back probably 15 years. So I can't remember it exactly, and I would have put more effort into it than what I've just given you. But you get the idea. I've tried to grab attention early on. And I've also demonstrated that I do stuff outside of work. Everyone who has a CV normally has work history. That's kind of the point of the CV. So talk about the things that you do outside of your work. That's what really helps you stand out. And if you don't do things, or you never have done things outside of your work, well, maybe it's time to step up. It doesn't have to be climbing the highest mountains in the world, but what can you do that interests you? Maybe you like chess, so you play to a high level of chess. You can put that in. Maybe you write, and you can say, here's my blog. It doesn't all have to be active. Wherever it may be, put that at the top of the CV, because everyone expects you to have worked at places. It's the other stuff that really helps you stand out.
So hopefully that gets you the job. But then the same approach doesn't have to stop, because once you're in a role, progressing is also really easy, because again, it's really easy to stand out. Most people in most companies are fine. Some people are terrible and they get moved on, but most are fine. A few are fantastic. And I think a lot of it comes from the same thing that you were talking about with CVs, Rob. People don't want to take risks. They don't want to stand out. So people will normally come in, and while they're getting settled into a business, they'll kind of feel out what the normal behaviors of that business are, and they will adapt to those norms. And sometimes that could even mean that they are dampening themselves down a bit. They're doing less of a standard, less quality than they would do left to their own devices, because they don't want to risk standing out. But you get the odd person who comes in and goes beyond, who clearly is working at a higher standard, who's throwing in ideas when no one else is, and is even sometimes being the one to step up and go, this isn't good enough. We should be doing better here. And when that happens, that is amazing. And those are the people who rise up the fastest and get all the opportunities, because of course they are.
They do. But again, it's easy to do that. Just most people won't, because it's uncomfortable. Like you've said, Rob, people want to just immediately settle and be liked by their teammates. I get that. The easiest way to be liked is just do what they do. But that doesn't help your career. That just helps you survive. But do you, in your career, want to thrive, or do you want to survive? And that's the choice that you have. But it's not hard to move up to that next level. If everybody else gets in at 9, if you're seen to be in at 8:30 and making a meaningful contribution at that time, that 30 minutes alone, that helps you stand out. Putting extra hours in to complete an important project when that's happening, working into an evening or possibly a weekend, that helps you stand out. As you've already said, Rob, putting your hand up to do things that aren't in your remit, or making suggestions that benefit the business. Even if they're not suggestions that are taken on board, they will get noticed. Owners and managers appreciate that you do that. And by the way, if you work in a business where ideas aren't appreciated, then you should move on. If you are trying to stand out and step up and that business doesn't recognize that, then move on. But our business absolutely does do that. We've promoted from within many times. And something I've said to the team over and over again is act like the job you want. So you do your job, but if you want to progress, operate in a way that shows you're already doing that job. And then it makes it hard not to give you that job when that opportunity comes around. Our marketing manager became our managing director. Our chief of staff, who is involved at leadership level and helps run the day-to-day as well, started in an admin type role. I can't even remember now, but that person's been promoted multiple times as well, because they've always operated in the role that they want, not the role that they have. Now, you may be thinking, listening to this, oh, well, I'm not paid to do that, so why would I do it? And that's fine. Stay where you are, because that's what will happen.
Exactly. I think the key thing to take away from this, that it isn't, if you double your effort, then you could double your results. No, if you put in 5% more effort, you could double your results, because that's the theme. That's how easy it is to stand out. And obviously, most people listening to this are going to have some kind of interest in property investment. The same applies there as well. And in fact, it's even easier there because the basic standard is so low in the property industry. So just doing the basics consistently is remarkable. If you've got new tenants moving in and the house is clean and there's a super brief handwritten note, that is like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And the same goes for if you're trying to get deals from estate agents, say. Estate agents get bombarded all the time with people who've been on a property course and call up and say, I'm such and such an investor, I've got the ability to move fast, blah, blah, blah. But those people normally only call once, maybe twice. If you keep showing up consistently, that's remarkable. That's better than almost everyone else. And eventually you'll stop getting fobbed off and they will take you seriously. And that's the point. That's working a bit harder, but it's not a lot harder. And you end up getting radically better results.
So where can you apply this in your life as an investor, as an employee, as a business owner? There is no limitation to where you think this way. But what I'd strongly encourage you to do is stop and go, where am I unhappy? What area of my life am I unhappy in? And what can I do to stand out? What can I do to level up the experience that I'm giving? Because the rewards will come, whether it's at home, work, business, as an investor, your health, it does not matter. If you apply this concept to any area in your life, you will notice dramatic improvements. And as Rob has said, it doesn't have to be a 2 times, 10 times improvement. It can just be a marginal improvement, but that marginal improvement will generate amazing results. So let us know what you think. Reach out to us on our social channels. We're both on Instagram and we're both on LinkedIn. It's at the Rob Dix and at Rob_Bents. And just search our names on LinkedIn. You'll find us there. Drop us a message. Let us know your thoughts. What do you think on this episode? And let us know what you'd like us to cover in future episodes. We always love your input. We'll be back next month with another AOB. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.